We'll lead off this week with the big news. Level 1 results are out in 3 days. The wait is over. You have till Thursday. And then there's no time to rest because Friday is the jobs report in both Canada and the US. 3 days. Level 3, you have 11 days. You get it next Thursday. So you've got one more week of foot tapping before you get there. Notice at the very bottom of the screen here, level 1 candidates, remember to complete your practical skills module for your results. The deadline there is April 1st. It must be done today. This is your last day. Don't mess around with that. If you haven't got it done, you need to drop everything you're doing now and start now and get it done. Whatever it takes, you need to get it done by the end of the day. For level 1, when you get your results on Thursday, I imagine the passing rate will be the range somewhere between 37 and 43%. That seems to be where it's landing. So for the minority of you, you will be going on to level 2. You have August or November to choose from, and November has the lower price and the longer time frame. So I seem to think that that kind of makes sense, unless you've already gotten a start on level 2. If you did not pass, I see no reason why you would go any further than August. You're not starting from zero. And next week for level 3, it is likely that the pass rate will be somewhere around the 50% range. That's typically where it lands, in around 50, sometimes as high as 55, 56. You are done. If you have not passed, I see no reason why you wouldn't make a run for August of 2024. Once the results are out for level 1, I'll probably do some kind of video on that, and again for level 3. Okay, let's review the number of days we have left until our exam. Level 1 for May. You have 15 days left to get through the content, and then you will then have 28 days for review. You should basically be almost done, 95 to 100% done. For level 2, you have 22 days until the beginning of the exam period, and then you enter into a 28-day review period. Again, 90 to 95% done there, maybe even all done. Going into August, registration for August closes May 14th. That's in 43 days if you're going to do the August exam. Level 3 is the earliest exam, 14.5 weeks. You got 101 days, 35 days for review. Level 2, you got 17 weeks, 119 days with 28 for review. And level 1, 16 weeks, 112 days, 28 for review. You really should have already started somewhere between 10 and 20% done at this point. Closer to the 20% for level 3, somewhere around 15 at level 1, and maybe as little as 10 to 15 at level 2. But certainly level 3, you're well on your way with 14.5 weeks before your review period. For November, early registration closes April 16th. That's in 15 days, and that's not bad. If you have to retake level 1 and you're thinking about November, you get your level 1 results on Thursday, which gives you 12 days to hit the early registration for November. If you've passed and you're looking at level 2 for November, you will get the early registration. Your results will be out before early registration. Lots of time here. Level 1 has 197 days and then a 28-day review period. Level 2 has 204 days and then a 28-day review period. You've got time. I don't know that it would have been worth starting already. I think you can wait until your results are out and then make your decision there, but lots of time. You've got lots of comfort in there. Since we are now in April, today is April 1st, office hours for the May exam for level 1 and level 2 begin, I think, within a few days, within the week or sometime early next week. The office hours begin for, I think, 4 or 5 weeks straight. So let's have a look at the schedule, and on this one I will let Richie explain what you can expect in the office hours and show you the office hour schedule.
Hello, Richie Owens from markmeldrum.com here. Just going to take a couple of minutes to remind you, if you're sitting for May 24, that's for level 1 or level 2, our office hour sessions kick off in April. April the 2nd for level 1, April the 10th for level 2. What are the office hour sessions, you may ask? Well, it's me or my colleague Darren, if it's going to be financial statement and analysis or a couple of other topics. But it'll be one of us answering your questions for 90 minutes we have scheduled. But if it goes longer than that, if we have more questions piling in, that's fine, we'll run over. But 90 minutes to begin with, live answering your questions as they come up. The idea of this is for you to get together with your peers and get any issues you have with the given topic of the day addressed. Now, I say given topic of the day. Now, let's take a look at the schedule just so you get an idea of what topics we cover and when. So if I bring up the website, you'll see on the left-hand side, we have a live sessions tab, and you want to click on office hours. And you'll see in there, if we scroll down, here's the calendar for level 1 and for level 2 for May. So you'll see we've got sessions on quant and derivatives, fixed income, FSA, equity and corporate issuers, portfolio management and alternative investments, and economics and portfolio management. We try and group topics together so we get a nice range of questions, and we try and put those topics together that seem to go together. Later on, as you get towards your exam, we'll have a few subjects grouped together, because it tends to be in those couple of weeks before the exam that people are running through mocks and they have a more kind of scattergun approach, a more random set of questions to ask. But the idea, as I say, is to get together with your peers and get your questions addressed. If you don't think you have any questions, it's useful to come along anyway and just hang back in the background and see what everybody else is asking. The CFA study process can sometimes feel like a lonely one, especially these days where we're all mostly online. I spent a long time doing live review classes. And when you do live review classes, you get that interaction between me as the instructor and between all of the candidates. So you kind of feel you're in a cohort and you know what everybody else is going through, and you kind of feel, all right, I know where I'm at, I know where other people are at. You miss out on that if you're at home, alone, online. So these sessions are good to get together, even as I say, if you don't think you have that many questions, to hear what other people are asking. Thinking, oh, that's a good question. If I'd thought about that, I would have asked it. I've not come across that in the curriculum yet, but certainly it's something I would have struggled with. Or it might just give you confidence. People are asking questions. You think, yeah, I know this. I am actually good at this. I'm actually further along in my studies than I thought I was. The format, I'll have a blank screen. You'll log in, you'll ask your questions, type your questions in live, and I'll just answer them as they come through, one by one. I'll sketch out on the screen, as if it were a lecture, exactly how I would attack whatever question you're asking, or try and explain whatever concept it is you're struggling with. So get on the website. If you're a full access member, these are free. If you've got full access, none of them cost a dime. You can just log in. You don't need to register. You just turn up on the day, ask your questions, and as I say, get genuine use out of feeling like you're a cohort, knowing what everybody else is going through. Level 1 for May and level 2, as I say, we run these office hours for every sitting. Mark will run the office hours for level 3 sittings as and when they come up. So get on the site, check out the schedule, and I will see you for level 1 starting April the 2nd, or for level 2 starting on April the 10th.
Q&A time from the last video. Working on L3 fixed income currently. First 3 readings were straightforward, but the credit strategies reading is brutal, especially the different credit spreads. So that whole section of the reading was lifted from a 2004 synopsis of credit spreads done by Lehman Brothers. So if you Google 2004 Lehman Brothers credit spreads, you'll get a better treatment of it. The author basically lifted the whole section and made it smaller by deleting certain things. and I think the author didn't quite fully understand the credit spreads either, and deleted sentences that would have just made it a lot easier. So I would recommend that. Thanks for taking the time to consistently put out CFA content. Currently scheduled to take level 1 in May. Completed my first run through the material. Starting my review process. Can you provide an outline of how I can best plan my review process? Unfortunately, I was only able to do minimal revision. You're asking this question on the video in which I did just do that. I did provide a review process. So I would, I guess, direct you back to the video. Monte Carlo simulation. May I request you to just elaborate with an example of high dimensionality problem in practical life? Well, let's say that you're attempting to forecast something. I don't know, anything, and you have 8 variables that you think are going to help in forecasting the outcome, and you have 6 quarters of observations. So you have 6 observations of each variable, but you have 8 variables. That is a high dimensionality problem when you have more variables than you have observations. Textbook defines MC as each key decision variable requires an assumed statistical distribution. This assumption facilitates incorporating non-normality, fat tails, and tail dependence as well as solving high dimensionality problems. Yeah, okay, so it is a way to come up with a whole bunch more observations than 6 by sampling within the distributions of each of the variables. And you can come up with, 1,000 different scenarios by sampling within those distributions. So it solves that problem. Question on ETF versus mutual funds from a liquidity perspective. One of the books mentioned ETFs need not necessarily provide liquidity in the event of a market stress, meaning if we need to sell, there are chances that no buyer is available. That's not what that means. Whereas in case of mutual funds, it doesn't matter to the investor. It's the responsibility of the fund to honor the redemption. So what is that? That's saying that the mutual fund needs to provide the liquidity. So if you take a mutual fund and you take all the assets, it has 100% of assets, about 5% typically is going to be held in cash. So 5% of the assets are not going to be performing because it has to be held in cash to meet liquidity needs. But an ETF can be 100% invested because the ETF trades on an exchange. So the ETF sponsor is not the one that has to provide liquidity. It's on an exchange with a bid-ask spread. And the authorized participant acts as a market maker by looking at the bid-ask spread, and when it gets out of line from the net asset value of the fund, the AP steps in for an arbitrage opportunity. So the AP is providing liquidity, not the ETF sponsor. Whereas with the mutual fund itself has to provide liquidity, hence it needs some of the assets under management in a liquid form. The ETF does not have that. This will be a drag on performance because of that. Preparing level 3 in relation to fixed income. Can you further explain the mechanics of risk rates and spreads? Risk rates and spreads, are they not the same thing? Maybe you mean risk-free rates and spreads during different economic oh, is that all? That's a seminar. That's not an answer. And that's not a problem to be solved. That's a task to be completed. I'll solve problems, but I won't complete tasks. I think you can get that done on your own. And the impact for low-quality securities. Well, a couple of problems here is this is not a question with a problem that I can solve. This is a task for me to complete. Secondly, you're saying, can I further explain the mechanics? Further from what point? I don't know what your understanding is, so I don't know what part to explain, and I'm certainly not going to go through the whole thing because that's a 20-minute, 30-minute seminar on its own. So if you have a question, try to ask it in such a way that there is a problem that I'm solving as opposed to a task that I'm completing. A couple of questions. Why is interest coverage calculated as EBIT over interest and not EBITDA over interest? As a lender, I should be more interested to see how this ratio pans out against near cash income, and EBITDA is nearer to cash compared to EBIT. Well, near to what kind of cash? Maybe nearer to CFO, but it is not nearer to free cash flow, which is really what you have available in the end to pay debt. Depreciation and amortization means you're using up your assets over time. If you want to maintain the productive capacity of your assets, it is expected that you're going to have some kind of CapEx equal to the amount of depreciation that you're using. Otherwise, at some point in the future, you will have no assets. You will have no productive assets. So EBIT is a closer proxy to free cash flow because you are taking D&A and just D&A into consideration and saying, well, we should have CapEx equal to the rate at which we use up the assets just to maintain the productive capacity. Now, you see, there's a question with a problem to be solved. That is a question. When I'm going through the proposition, that's Modigliani and Miller, what is wrong in the statement that if VL not equal to VU, then people can gain arbitrage profits? And that as leverage goes up, expected return on equity will go up. Aren't these true in the real world as well? And if it is true, well, no, the first statement's not true. Why do we say that propositions do not hold in the real world? Yeah, nothing causes confusion for finance students and some finance professors that I've heard. Nothing causes more confusion than the framework from Modigliani and Miller. Does capital structure affect firm value? The answer is yes. Yes, it does. Capital structure does affect firm value. Okay, why? Why does it affect it? Well, without some kind of framework, why, you'll start to get a whole bunch of theories. Just a whole bunch of theories and a whole bunch of experiments and tests and data to say, well, my variable explains 3%, my variable explains 2.5%, my variable explains 4%, and that's how academic research works, is you get 100 variables all claiming to explain 3 or 4% of it. It can't possibly be that complicated. So what Modigliani and Miller did was said, well, under what conditions would the yes be a no? In other words, capital structure does not affect firm value. What assumptions do we have to make such that we get to a no? And if you can assume away the relationship, then the only variables you need to explain why it matters are these. So for example, I ask you to give me a theory of clothing. Give me a theory of clothing. Well, you can come up with a whole bunch of things, right? A whole bunch of variables that can explain clothing because it's wide open. To tame the complexity of the problem, what we can do is imagine a world where clothing would not exist. So we have stable temperature, right? An unchanging stable temperature of, let's say, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. We have no pests. In other words, no insects, no gnats, no fleas, no mosquitoes, no nothing, and no modesty. Let's assume that we live in a world with a stable temperature, no pests, and no modesty. Under these conditions, clothing would not exist. So I've just gotten rid of clothing, which means to explain clothing, it must be this, this, or this. You don't need any other variables than that. Notice how I limited the set of variables that were necessary to explain clothing. A theory of clothing would only include those things that were necessary to assume it away. And that's what Modigliani and Miller is doing with their assumptions. When they say that dividends are irrelevant, they're not really saying dividends are irrelevant. They're just saying let's just assume dividends are irrelevant. So there's a bunch of assumptions they make that would, if those assumptions held, result in the statement capital structure does not affect firm value, which means When we're looking for the relationship of how capital structure does affect firm value, it is only that list of things, right? So if you read it in that light, the assumptions are the explanatory variables of why it matters, not why it doesn't. Level 3 fixed income. Yield curve strategies. It says being long a call option on a bond adds positive duration. Being long a put adds negative duration. I don't understand the logic. Okay, well, it relates to delta. A call has positive delta. A put has negative delta. So if you're long a call, you have positive delta, and that means that the price of the call will change at this rate as the price of the underlying bond changes, and the underlying bond changes when you have changes in interest rates. Hence, the call by the transitive property will change by delta as interest rates change. That is duration. Puts have negative delta, hence they'll have negative duration. Wrote L2 November 21, super confident about my knowledge, failed by a question or two. That sucks. Due to some life events, I didn't try again until November 22, when I didn't put enough time in and failed again. I'm now determined to pass in May 24. Finalized my 9th topic this week, looking for review advice. Pretty confident in my content knowledge, but I haven't been reviewing the content regularly as you recommend. 60 days left. How do I tackle review? So I have covered that. And I will say this again. Excuse me. This is not your first exam in your life. It's not even your second exam. It may be your second CFA exam, but it's not your second exam. You've had dozens of midterms and finals in your undergrad, and you prepared for those, and you reviewed for those, and you passed those. This is no different. It is the same thing. It is no different. The only difference between this and what you did in your undergrad is this is self-study. It's self-directed, and it's pass or fail on one exam. That's the only difference. But you've prepared for exams many times in the past. Whatever made you successful there, do that. And for everyone reviews differently. It's not just one formula, and everybody does that one formula, and everyone follows the same step 1, step 2, step 3. There are similarities, but that's all it is. You may prefer to review one particular way that has worked for you in the past. Somebody may have a different approach that has worked for them in the past. But this, you should not be lost on how to do this. You have a full university career behind you where you've done this, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 times. So this is nothing new. Really new into finance world. Decided to pursue a master's in finance to step into the aircraft leasing industry. Lay my sights on CFA. It is such a good recap of my undergrad and ongoing content. I'm getting an internship in the airline. I want to work in aircraft leasing industry where there will be more CFA application. Any suggestion? Any suggestion to what? Where's the question? You're new to finance. You did a master's. It was a good recap of your knowledge. You're getting an intern in aircraft leasing. Any suggestions? Suggestions about what? I'm not sure I find the question here. You seem to know what you're doing and what you want to do and where you're going. Unless you, I don't know what suggestion I would give, because I don't see a question in there. What is the best way to grasp the different behavioral biases in portfolio management and distinguish their differences on exam questions? Yeah, they all sound, some of them can sound the same, right? Here's the thing about behavioral finance. In my PhD days, there was one seminar we had on behavioral biases. You have 15 of them in that reading. There are literally hundreds of them, all of them sounding pretty much like the one right beside them, all with different names because they're all from different authors who needed to publish something original. So they call their bias by a slightly different name because they looked at it in a slightly different context, and it all sounds the same after a while. That if you give me enough words, you give me a scenario and you give me enough words, I can make the case that it's almost anything. That's the unsatisfying thing about these subjective social sciences. I don't find them, other than a couple. There's a couple of biases, I think the big ones. But once you start getting into all these little small ones, in this scenario, under these conditions, if you ignore this, it's called this bias and that bias, and there's just so many of them. The behavioral finance questions that will be asked in one of two ways. Either really, really long setup to eliminate the possibility that can be anything else but the one answer, or so blatantly obvious it can only be one thing. CFA in the past, from what I've seen, has sided with the blatantly obvious. So they'll ask you a question and it will be so blatantly obvious what the answer is as to not be a test of anything. But I had to write one small paper for this seminar. We were given a sort of a narrative to read based on some research that was done, and it was a qualitative research, and there was this narrative that was provided of this observation, and we had to assess what was going on. So I took it to a really extreme, stupid place using nothing but the biases, and it all made sense. Just to demonstrate that you can make any case you want with this stuff. It's not a science. It's creative writing. You go ahead and demonstrate a behavior, and I can creatively apply any bias to you that I want. That's the unsatisfying thing about behavioral finance. Is it worth it to buy the curriculum books or just watch your videos? Well, you don't buy the curriculum books. When you have the learning ecosystem, all of the text from the books is right there on the screen. So you've got them anyways. Preparing for the level 1 exam in August. Completed quant and fixed income. I've seen you recommending derivatives and alts as the next step, but I am a slow learner. Do you think I should get FSA out of the way now and get back to the others after? FSA is long, but it's not hard. It's just long. There's really not a lot to figure out. There's just a lot to remember. But it's not as if you're going to scratch your head and go, I don't get it. You'll get it. It's just you'll say, wow, there's a lot to get. Yeah, there's a lot. There's detail after detail. Whereas with derivatives, sometimes candidates sit there and go, I don't get it. I don't get it. So there is something to figure out in derivatives. Once you get it, you get it. But in FSA, there's really nothing that is a brain teaser where you have to think it through and go, I just don't see it. It's like level 2 equity. Nothing to figure out. It's pretty easy stuff. It's just long and there's a lot of it. That's FSA. It's just long and there's a lot of it. So I seem to think that if I got to figure stuff out, I want more time than less to figure it out. Because it may take me longer to figure it out, and if I got 2 weeks left and I got to figure it out, I got a bit of a panic attack going on, and you can't learn in a hurry, right? So your choice, but FSA is pretty straightforward, not a lot to figure out. If one has passed level 1 in 2017 and took a break due to personal reasons, do they have to redo level 1? No, they do not. There is no expiration on this. You can go right to level 2. Relating to the PEG ratio you discussed in the market outlook for NVIDIA, is it appropriate to use a PEG on a forward PE? Yeah. Doesn't forward PE already include the growth forecast into its forward earnings? Well, yeah, it does. That's why you divide it by its growth, its growth rate to determine whether or not, you're not, I guess you're missing something here. So you're saying that the earnings the earnings forecast, Q1 all the way to Q4, within it has some kind of forecast for growth. You're right. It does have some kind of forecast for growth, and that is the G that you'll be using in the denominator. But what you're missing is you're multiplying this by the price. It is the price that we're trying to determine whether or not it makes sense. So the price times the earnings over the growth rate. Does that make sense? Are you getting a PEG ratio of 1? Right? So it's not a, let's say you have earnings that are expected to grow 50%. You had $1 in earnings, it's going to grow 50%. You're going to get $1.50 over the next year, so there's 150. And that's a 50% growth rate, which means you'd be dividing this by 50. Whatever you're multiplying out, you'd be multiplying by 50. So if the price, let's say the price multiple, let's say the stock is trading for $150, right? That is 100 times earnings. So you have a price multiple of 100 times earnings that are expected to grow 50%. You're renormalizing it for the 50%, you get 2. So it's the price that is market determined, which could be out of line with the growth rate in earnings based on some multiple. Are you getting that? So no, you're not double counting because your numerator isn't earnings. Your numerator is the price multiple that you're paying based on the price. How can I contact you directly? Click on my channel, click on About, and my email address should be right there. I see email address on the website for support. Yeah, that'll get to me. But I have a query that I would like to address to you personally via email. How do I do that? Either through LinkedIn or through YouTube. CFA email seems to imply that we don't finish the PSM module, our test is voided. If you do not complete a PSM by the time results are released on April 4th, you will not receive an exam result. Yes, that is true. It will be voided, and you will have to re-register as a level 1 candidate and pay all the applicable fees and continue your journey in the CFA program. Yeah, that is a little much. I mean, if that is what you got from CFAI, that is what you got. Today is the last day. Next year I will be starting my accounting articles, an accounting firm. I want to do my level 1 during this time. If I allocate 7 months, will 2 hours a day be enough to get me to the end? I don't know. I can answer it very generically that that's a lot of time, but I know nothing about you. It might be way more time than you need, or it may be nowhere near enough time that you need. I know nothing about your ability to learn. I know nothing about your aptitude. All I can do is talk in averages, but very few people are the average. There's some distribution around the average, but very few people are an actual average. So on an average basis, it's ample time. But I don't know if you're above average or below average. Currently enrolled in level 2. Wondering about your formula sheet. I am in fixed income and notice key rate duration is not a formula on your formula sheet. Also noticed this for some other formulas. Is it safe to assume that if the formula isn't on your formula sheet, then it's, in your opinion, it won't be most likely on the exam? Well, I haven't seen the formula sheet for a number of years now. I sold the business 2 years ago, right? So I'm going to make some guesses. It could be that the person who is updating the formula sheet has made an assessment that since the learning objectives don't include the word calculate, that it's not likely that there's going to be a calculate question on the exam. So has not included it. Level 2 has a whole bunch of formulas. I mean, putting them all on there is potentially misleading because you're not going to need all of them. There are some LOSs that use the word calculate. That's a dead giveaway that you really should have that formula on your formula sheet. There are some others that just say discuss. or you know, contrast, but keywords other than calculate and interpret. So it's not likely that you'll have to use that formula to calculate. And that's it for this week.